For the first part of making this blanket, we need to have the sock loom 2 from Knitting Board. If you don't have this loom, you should be able to do the same thing using the using the all-in-one loom from Knitting Board. The gauge is pretty similar. So what you're going to do is if you're using the sock loom 2, you're going to cast on one side. So again, we're casting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So we're casting on 22 pegs. So if you're doing the all-in-one loom, you're going to do 22 pegs, unless you want it bigger. Stay tuned to the end of this video, and I'll give you some tips and tricks for working this project in different ways. So the first thing I want to do is a simple E-wrap cast on. You're also going to want some sort of stitch marker. I have a little ring here, as you can see, that I'm going to be using, because it's important that you have something, because you're going to be decreasing and then increasing in order to make the square. You're going to cast on, get your little slip knot, go ahead, place it on the first peg, tighten it up a little bit, and then go ahead and just do the normal E-wrap cast on. Okay, once you've got the E-wrap cast on locked in, this is where having the stitch marker will come in handy. You're going to, as we work from left to right, you're going to purl. When we work right to left, we're going to E-wrap knit. And that's going to be the rhythm you're going to be doing through this whole project. But the important part you're going to be doing is you're going to be using your stitch marker to your advantage in order to decrease down to where we need to be and then increase back up to where we have to be. So we're going to work our way from the starting peg to our stitch marker doing the purl. And again, for those that are not familiar with it, if you're just coming to my channel, the purl stitch, you simply take your tool through the loop, put your working yarn under, turn it so you create a loop, and you place that loop back on the peg. And you're working that purl stitch all the way over to where the stitch marker is, like I said. Now it's important to note that you're going to be doing 4 of these squares, and 2 of the squares you're going to start with one color and end with the other. So you're going to pick 2 different colors. I've got a blue and a purple that I'm going to use. So I'm going to do 2 squares where I'm using purple to start and ending with blue, and repeat those 2 squares, doing what you're going to see me do now. And then later I'm going to switch it up so that I start with the blue and do a purple, and we want that for the diamond effect in the middle of the blanket. So again, just keep in mind that you want 2 alternating colors, and you're going to be switching up what you do. I will go over these tips again at the end of the video in case you want to see more of a visual of what I'm talking about. So again, I'm just working the purl stitch all the way back to my stitch marker right here. Now, as we get to the end of this row, what you're going to do is your stitch marker is going to become like your best friend for this project. You're going to, in about a couple seconds here when we get to the end, you're going to end up moving that stitch marker in one, basically. Again, this will help decrease it. And what that means is each time you purl, do the row purl. Remember, we're purling from left to right, and we're E-wrapping from right to left. So again, I'm doing my last couple purl. And it's not a matter of how many rows you do, because you're just going to be doing this process until you get back to the first peg. So again, I'm doing my last little purl here. What I'm going to immediately do now is move my stitch marker over one, because I want to make sure that the next time I do my purl row, I do not go past my stitch marker. That's important. That's just your stopping point. That's to let you know, stop there. So your stitch marker is very important. Now I'm going to E-wrap back all the other way. This is creating obviously a garter stitch throughout. It helps the project lay flatter, so that's why I did it this way for a simple project. So again, you're just going to E-wrap back to the beginning. Okay, so we're getting back to this beginning again. Now we're going to go back to purling, because like I said, we're going back and forth. Now when I purl, I'm going to not go past this peg. I'm only going to purl till I get to my stitch marker. I hope that makes sense. You're going to stop where your stitch marker is. Do not go past it when you're purling. And purl your way over to that stitch marker. So again, as I'm getting close to my stitch marker, remember, I do not go past it. Remember, I'm on my stitch marker. This is where my stitch marker is. This is the last peg that I will purl. I leave this peg totally alone. Now, before I go back to E-wrapping this way, I'm going to move my stitch marker over. This is just to remind me the next time I'm purling, I'm going to stop at the next peg over. So you see what I'm doing is after each part, I'm moving it back and forth. So again, the stitch marker gets moved in one every time you're done doing your purl row. And again, we're going to go back with E-wrap knit. And that's what the process is. You're going to purl to the right, knit to the left, and you're going to decrease your pegs that you're doing this on every time you finish a purl row. So that's what you're going to do. I'm getting ready to purl back this way. I'm going to take this, after I get to my last purl peg, I'm going to move my purl peg over one, E-wrap knit back, move the purl, and then do my purling again until I hit to the new place that the stitch marker is. And I'm going to continue this process until I'm down to just one peg left, where my stitch marker is on this first peg. So that's what you're going to do right now. You're going to work this process like I'm doing, purling to this way, moving your stitch marker over, E-wrapping that way, and never going past where your stitch marker is until you've decreased it down to this first peg. And then I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to, for the next process of getting it back to the way we want. But make sure, like I said, I suggest 2 different colors. You can even do 2 different shades of the same colors, but it's really cool if you can have there be a difference. So again, go ahead and keep doing this process, decreasing as you go, and doing your purl one way, your E-wrap the other way, and moving this over, as I just did for the couple rows, until you get down to the last peg, and then we'll move on. Okay, I'm working my last little bit, as you can see. So again, I'm purling to when I get to my stitch marker. And purl. And I moved it over. As you can tell, I've worked my way down, so I'm just on the last couple stitches. And you can kind of move it over. You don't even have to lock it in place depending on which kind you have. Again, it's just a visual. And at this point, you really don't need it on there. It's just something that I feel is, if you keep it on there and keep doing it, it becomes a good rhythm and then you don't forget. Again, one last little purl here. And again, we're still going to move it over even though we don't necessarily need it. Do our little E-wrap. Okay, now I want to give you a little glimpse. It should be coming through looking like this, which looks weird. But now we got to start with the second color that we're going to do. But that's what it'll kind of look like when it's coming out through the bottom. It looks kind of strange, I know. Now again, we need to just purl this last stitch here. And the purple. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to add our second color, so go ahead and cut a tail on this. We're going to weave all these tails in when we do the crochet part of this. And you're going to take your alternate color, which I have this bright blue, and we're going to tie it to our working yarn. And now we're going to pretty much repeat the same process, but we're now going to increase the stitches. Okay, so just kind of lay that in there, grab your working yarn. And you're going to do the same process we did when we decreased down. We're going to be doing the same way of increasing. So again, we're going to do our purl on the first peg here. Like I know I just did one, but we're going to do one there. You're going to move this over to the next peg. And again, we're working the purl stitch when we go to the right. And we still have to go backwards, going with the E-wrap to the left. And what you want to do is you want to move this down, similar to how you did the other time when we decreased it down each time we did the purl. We're going to do the same thing with this. So we're going to do our purl to the stitch marker. Move it over before we E-wrap back. So E-wrap back. Make sure you got it in the right spot there. Knit it over. Work our way back. What's great about when you have 2 different colors, you'll actually kind of know where you left off, because you'll be able to see that this is still purple. We haven't done anything with it. So now we want to purl again to that stitch marker. And again, after you do that purl row, we go ahead and we already move the stitch marker over to the next. Again, it's a little easier not to use a stitch marker when they're 2 different colors, but I still do. It's a habit. It makes it easier to remember what you're doing. And again, we E-wrap back. So you're going to continue this process again, purling to the right, knitting, E-wrap knit to the left, moving your stitch marker out after each purl until you get all the way back to the last peg. So again, it's the reverse of what we just did. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you here when we get to the last peg. Okay, I'm on my last couple pegs that I have to do purl. I've moved it out. I'm worked to the last peg, like I said, and we're going to finish up this row of purl. Okay. And now for this part, we're going to go right back and we're going to go do our E-wrap back to the beginning again. And your product should be coming out. You should be able to see that it's kind of doing the two colors and giving you a sort of square thing. But if you notice, some of the stitches go this way and some go that way. That's why it's important. I'll mention that again in the end when I give you a little more detail of what you should do, because you're going to need 4 of these, but there's a process. So let me not get ahead of myself. Let's finish this off and then I'll explain that more. So we're going to do our E-wrap back to the beginning. Okay, so now we're ready to cast off the square. We're going to do a crochet cast off. We're going to do 2 chains in between each of these pegs as we bind this off. So make sure you have a pair of scissors, and a crochet hook handy for this part. And all we do for the crochet bind off, as we've done in previous videos, is we're going to rewrap first peg once, rewrap it twice. Go ahead and move these down so they're out of your way. Okay, and then we move it over, knit it over, rewrap once, rewrap twice, and move it over. Again, knit it over, rewrap once, rewrap twice, move it over. Knit it over, rewrap once, rewrap twice, move it over. Now continue this till you get to the last peg. Okay, we just got a couple more here to do. And we place it onto the final peg. and we knit it over. Now cut yourself a tail, and if you want, grab your crochet hook, take the loop off and place it on your crochet hook. Remove the loom. Now take your working tail that you have left over and put it through the loop. And if you want, you can give it a little knot to secure it. And there you have your square done. So this is the finished square. Now what you need are 4 squares in order to sew them together to make the diamond shape. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. These are 2 that I've already put together. These were done because I started with the blue color and ended with the purple, and I needed to do 2 of those to make this side line up. Now we just finished our second one. What we're going to need to do is this will come up here and it'll line up, because again we did this in the garter stitch, so we're going to have our stitches be able to line up in here going the same way. You're going to do another one this way. So this side I started with the blue color and ended with the purple, and I did two squares that way. Now I need to do a second square this way, so when I'm ready I'm going to start with the purple and end with the blue, and I have one now. I'll make the other one so I can flip it, and that way I'll have one up here, one here, and they'll all sew together to make our diamond-ish pattern. And we'll end up with about a 12-inch completed square to be the inside of our baby blanket. So again, it's important when you do them that you do 2 squares where you start with one color and end with the other, and then you need to do 2 more squares where you start with the opposite color that you did before and do 2 squares. I hope that makes sense. And once you get them done, then I'm going to show you how I put these 2 together. I would say if you have, I'm trying to find the end of it, you're going to want one of these. I got it in a looming kit. It's a yarn needle, so you want something like this. This is what we're going to use. If you don't have this, you may be able to do the same thing with a crochet hook, like I've shown you in other videos that show me using a crochet hook to join stuff together. But for this, it is easier if you've got yourself one of those plastic yarn needles. So again, go ahead and make sure you got all your squares. And what's good about these is you can always lay out and make sure you did them the right way, and you can decide which way you want to do them. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make my last one, and then I'm going to show you how I sewed these together, and we'll get the whole thing together before we move on to the next part, which is doing our crochet around. Okay, for this part 2 of it, we need to get the panels to go together, the 2 squares. Like I showed you in this one that I've already done together. So the best thing you can do is make your 4 squares first. Do not stitch them immediately together. Lay out your project and making sure it's where you want it lined up. I was already knowing that it was going to be okay, so that's why I already did these now. But now the other 2 that we just did, we're going to make sure we piece them together however you need to be. This is important so that you can see which way you want it. Another idea that you could do if you wanted is you might be able to like switch which way they go and maybe make even more texture in the diamond. But you want to line them up and make sure that they're going the way you want. That, like this, see how we're going a line across? If we didn't catch it and make sure there's a line across, and we had messed up somehow and we were getting all discobobbled, see, this wouldn't line up because this is going this way, that's going that way. So you really need to take the time to make sure you piece them together the way you want. Now, if you need to, you can go ahead and use maybe binder clips or safety pins to kind of get your seams the way you want them to be, to hold it in place for you. You don't want to be stretching the projects out. Keep them just as like they are. Don't stretch them out to sew them together. Keep it kind of relaxed when you do. And what you're going to do, and what I had to do for this one, is once I laid them down, I flipped it. And so that way my seam, which is barely noticeable, is on one side. So like I flipped them so that they were kind of facing each other, and then I could sew along there and it worked. Or even if you flip them this way, as long as you make sure your seam lines up. So for these, I can take these 2 that are like this, I can just flip this over, and I'm going to seam along this part. Be very careful, make sure you're seaming the right part. Don't go over here and seam this part, because then it's going to totally mess you up. You won't end up having it the way you need it. So again, lay them out, just flip the one down on top to the other, and we're going to sew this together. Move that out of my way. I'm being very careful because one time I messed up in a video. So now it's going to be tricky, is I am going to be using blue yarn because I want to match the color of the diamond there, but I'm making sure they're lined up as best I can. If you need to, like I said, I don't have one nearby, but if you need to, use a binder clip to clamp it together, get some safety pins and put it in there. When they're this size, I don't think you need that as much, but you will if you're making these a bigger version. If you're making bigger squares and you're trying to line them up, then you may want something to keep them together better. So get yourself a pretty long piece of string, yarn, excuse me, that is in the color of the part that you're going to seam together. And I'm using the blue, and of course, like I said, I'm using the yarn needle. You thread the needle just like you would if you were sewing through, and I just need to put my knot at the end. And all these stragglers that you see, you're going to be like, well, how are you going to get rid of them? Well, we're simply going to hide them when we do the crochet part. But we're not worrying about that right now. So I got my little knot. Again, this may be hard to see. And then I'm going to hold it up, and I'm going to pick a side that I want to start with. I'm going to start on the inside of the project and work my way out. And I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to go right into the corner. And I'm just going to go down a light stitch into one of the stitches and pull it through. Now your knot might not keep it there because like it might try to slide through. So what I did when I did the other one is I actually tied it together so that it locked it right in that corner piece. I will worry about these stragglers when I sew together in the middle. I'll hide them. So then you're going to go ahead and you're going to work your way across. Again, I know it's a little hard to see because of the color, but I could not, if I used a contrasting color, it wouldn't match up. So you're just going in very little bit down and you're pulling it through. And if it's flipping onto the side or whatever, just kind of line it up and kind of work your way over. Like I said, you're not pulling the project tight, you're just working your way over. Don't go too far down. And always remember, if there is boo-boos, they're not always bad to show imperfections in a product, but you're just working your way over. See, the stitches are on top, I'm working just a little bit below the stitch. And again, you don't have to pull too tight, you just want to pull it through. Working along that seam, holding the two together, making sure your end points are kind of together too, because you want it to end on that part. So just work your way gently across. It got caught. Okay, we're getting almost to the end. If you don't have a needle, like I said, you could try doing a similar thing with a crochet hook. Again, line up your two end points as close as you can and put that last stitch in there. When you go through this last time, I want you to go and you have your yarn this way. You're going to pull it through. You're going to backtrack the needle into that hole and then pull it to create a knot in the end of the corner. And that binds that part together. And if you want to see, let me back up real quick. We now have it seamed together. And it's okay if there's a little definition of where the seam is, that's fine, but it's going to still look nice when we get the seam together. So that's seamed together, and now what we have to do, excuse me, is piece together the middle. We got to work the middle now. And since we have stragglers on the middle, we'll try to like hide them in a little bit as we sew it together. So you're going to do the same process in the middle as you did here. So once you got your knot, like I said, once you make sure you have your knot at the end here, we knotted that in. You can go ahead, make sure we're cutting the right part here. Okay, and then this we'll worry about weaving in and figuring out when we do the other side. So again, this time you're going to lay it to make sure you get it the way you want. Okay, figure out your stragglers that you can worry about later. And so we want it to be this way, so I'm just going to simply fold it over. I'm going to turn it so it's this way, and I'm going to do my best to line up the stitches. And where we've got these stragglers, I'm actually going to just lay them, oops, let me go this way, lay them on the seam so that when we do the knitting, it'll kind of lock them into place. I hope that makes sense. So let me go and get some more yarn on my needle and we'll sew these two panels together. Okay, I've got plenty of yarn on my needle. This time you'll see a lot more because you want to make sure you have enough. And what we're going to do is, again, we're lining it up to the best of our ability. Again, binder clips or safety pins might help, or even if you wanted to, you could even do clothespins along the top if you needed that to help you line it up. So we're going to start in one corner, and because we've got these stragglers, I'm actually just going to kind of first go into the corner, the two corners, line them up, go through, pull my yarn all the way through. I've got a lot more yarn this time. Okay. And again, I just want to make sure it's locked into place like I did the other one. So I'm just going to make sure I do a little extra little knot here. Okay, and then I'm going to take my needle, make sure there's no other strands in my way here, and I'm going to try to hide these strands. So I'm going to take them and I'm going to kind of lay them across a little bit, grab these other stragglers that I have back here, kind of lay them across if I can. And they don't need to be as long, so you can kind of even trim them down a little bit. But lay them across, grab your needle, keeping things as lined up as you can. And you should have the middle seam that you can use here to make sure the middle's lined up. Lay them across, go into your two top stitches like we did before, pull it through. And again, we're holding down those and we're going to hide them under the yarn. And work our way across. Oops, sorry. And if you have middle ones, you're going to do the same thing when you get to the middle ones. You're going to try to lay them across and trim them down a little bit. And as you can see with us doing that, we're kind of hiding them. See, we're not seeing them on the inside as well. So we're just hiding them in, lining up our project as best we can. And once you feel you got them kind of secure in there, you can even still go back in and just trim them a little more. And work your way down the project. Keeping your eye on lining them up, make sure they're lined up as much as you can. And you keep checking to make sure that they're lined up. So just make sure you just keep check that you're not moving them around too much. The middle one where there's already a seam might be a little trickier to do, so just keep that in mind as you're hitting the 4 points there. Again, we get close to the end, keeping an eye on how it's lined up. Getting into those last couple stitches here. Again, these will hide when we do the crocheting around. And again, usually do one more into that spot, the end piece. Have your loop, your needle going back through to help tie it off. And I usually like to do things at least twice. That didn't go where I wanted it to. Okay, and then cut that. Okay, and now we move all these stragglers out of your way. We have the 4 pieces sewn together to make our diamond shape. So I mean, it may not be perfectly lined, like you see a seam here, it may not be totally lined, but it still gives you the idea, and you can still kind of play with it. Keep in mind when someone's using a blanket, it's going to be bunched up, so don't worry about how perfect it is that way. But the idea is, if you're really good at stitching, you probably would even be able to do a better job than I did. But I really like that. It's not as noticeable in person as it may be looking on camera, but we get our nice diamond shape. Now the next part is to work our way around this whole project. So that's part 3, is the crocheting part. So let's move on to that in 1 second. As I said, kind of a little disclaimer at the beginning, is that this isn't necessarily a reversible baby blanket. And that's mainly because if I turn this over, you really see the seams that we did a lot more. But since you're going to be laying it on the baby this way, it's not going to be as noticeable. If you're better with a needle and sewing than I am, then you probably can get the seam to be hidden even more. So I just want to put that out there. So if you're a better seamstress, you definitely can probably make this a little less noticeable on one side, and therefore it would almost be a reversible. But now we're going to worry about the outside border. I'm going to use the blue to go around. I will say this, if I run out of the blue going around, I will switch back over to the purple. But all you're going to need is a crochet hook. I'm using a size G for this yarn. Again, this is just a weight of 4 yarn. You're going to start in a corner. I'm going to come in here so you can see. You're going to start in a corner. You're going to place your crochet hook in. You're going to put your loop from your slip knot on there. And you're going to pull that through. And come on. Oh, don't fight me today, I tell you. I'm having issues with filming today. Okay, get on there. Pull that through. Now we're going to do double crochet. So we got double crochet, which means we're going to wrap our crochet hook once. And if you don't want to do the stragglers right now, we can hide them later. Wrap your crochet. I'm really out of focus. Let me get back here. Wrap your crochet hook once. Go into a stitch. Grab your working yarn. Come back out. You got 3 loops now. Wrap it again. Go through the first 2. Wrap it again. Go through the next 2, so you're back to 1 being left. Okay, let's try that again. I'm going to try to zoom in this time, see if I can show you better. You're going to wrap it once. You're going to go into the next stitch, grab your working yarn, come back out. You've got your 3 loops. Wrap it again. Go through the first 2. Wrap again. Go through the last 2. And that's your double crochet. So we're going to work that across. Now when you get to corners, To go around, you're going to have to do more chains in the corner, and I'll explain that when we get to the first corner. So you're just going to work yourself across, and if you really pay attention, you can get an idea of what stitches you should go into. Again, I'm looking for the next stitch, like right there. I can wrap it. I'm looking for the next kind of opening. And again, you're just kind of doing your double crochet around. And see what it does is gives you a little more height there. I need to get this in a better position for me here. And I apologize if you hear my fan in the background. It's a little warm here today, and I'm like, I cannot film with no fan on. I don't need to melt. So again, we're just rewrapping it once. And I know, let me see if I can. Okay, we're rewrapping it once. We're going into the next stitch, grabbing the working yarn, coming back out, rewrapping, going through two, rewrap, go through two again. It's just hard to know how to put this so that I can have you guys be able to see and not have it in my way. Like I said, if you don't want to try hiding any of these loose stragglers now, you can weave them into the project at the end. Okay. Now it's going to be a little while before I'm all the way to this end, so I'm going to go off camera real quick and get to the corner so that way I can show you what to do when you hit the corners. Okay, we're getting closer to the corner that we're going to do, and as you can see, we get a nice little border here, which just makes the purple even stand out more. So now when we get to the corner, so I got one more stitch to do, or one more loop to do here. I believe, oh no, that actually is my corner. Okay, so once you get to the corner, you're going to go into there, you're going to do what you've normally been doing, your double crochet. But then you're going to go back into that same spot. So you're going to go back into that same spot another time and do a double crochet. And then you're going to go one more time. So you're going to do 3 times into the same spot, excuse me, when you hit the corner of your project. And what that does is it makes it easier to turn the corner, because we need to turn around. And so then we can go, after we did 3 in the corner, we can go to the next stitch and do our double crochet around. And it might be a little tricky to do the corners because it's where they're tied up, but if you can see now, when we did the double crochet, we kind of turned that corner a lot better, and it'll help make the project lay a little more flat. So we need to do 3 double crochets in every time you hit a corner to move around. So I'm going to keep doing double crochet all the way around, and I'm going to do 3 chains every time, or go into the same spot 3 times every time I hit a corner. So keep an eye as you work your way around. You'll be able to tell when you need to do it. And you're going to work the project till you get it to the length that you want. So have a tape measure handy to kind of measure as you go. I'm going to make mine go to the length that you see right here, and then I'm going to bind off the crochet part, and I'll come back and show you how to do that. So again, you're just going to work in, constantly going around it with double crochet and doing the extra things in the corners until you get it the size that you want. So we'll come back here when it's time to get it off the crochet hook. Okay, we're getting close to the end. Now I went around till it got about 21 by 21 inches. Ideally you would make it bigger for a baby, but I don't have anyone to give this to right now, and I'm getting low on my blue, so I might want to switch out. I can pick this project up again later and continue going around and getting the size I want, but this is just to give you the basic idea of how it's going to look when you get that like diamond shape in the middle. So when I'm ready to kind of finish this up, I've gone around, and you can actually count your rows pretty easy too. So you can count your rows and know how many times you crocheted around. Now I'm doing my 8th row, and I noticed that I had 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But here I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm working my 8th one. So I'm going to be binding this off right in this corner. So I've got to finish getting all the way to the corner. I wanted to kind of show you so that I'm still working on it. And we're going to bind it off, and then I'll share a couple tips and tricks for modifying this for another, for a different loom. Basically, I can kind of tell you some of the tips now. What you can do is I would use any loom that you can get away with using one strand of yarn, similar to what I'm using here. I think that the all-in-one loom would be a great loom to use if you want to make really big diamond insets that you want to sew together. Another thing would be if you do a bulky yarn, again, you're going to want a loom appropriate to it. The way we did these in here can be done on any loom. I know a lot of people will end up asking me, can I do it on this loom? Can I do it on that loom? Yes, you can even do it using round looms, because you're going to use them as a flat panel and do the same process, and then you're going to do the same crochet around. So this is a great blanket that you can turn around and modify to whatever loom you want to use. You can make this part bigger or smaller depending on how many pegs you cast on. So keep that in mind when you're doing this, that there's a lot of ways you can kind of tweak this. You can make each diamond part be 2 different colors and have it be a multiple color design on the inside, creating that kind of shape. So there's a lot of flexibility into it, so I hope that's you guys find that as a plus. And again, if you know how to like sew panels together better, you won't have the seam showing as much as I do. So we're almost to the end here. Make sure you have a pair of scissors, and again, we just got a couple more to do, and then we'll be at our ending part here for binding off. I want to bind it off right in the corner. So I'm still doing the double crochet. But like I said, if you use I wouldn't do 2 strands of yarn. I really feel like that would be too tricky to keep an eye on making sure you get all the loops when you're doing either the crochet or doing the other, doing the diamond pattern. So I wouldn't use 2 strands. I would use a loom either that lets you use a bulky yarn or 1 strand. It would be a lot easier if you're not that familiar with doing double strands. Okay, so last one here. Okay. Now we're going to bind it off in this corner. So what I need to do is I need a tail. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to give myself a pretty long tail. I always make a tail, and ironically I had to cut this yarn together, so hopefully that doesn't cause an issue. But always give yourself a longer tail than you think you need. That way, it's just what I do. It's my habit. So now we got the middle, and we want to join these 2. So we're going to go into the corner, grab that, put our double crochets, and then we're going to go in here without doing a double crochet. We're going to pull this through, and we're going to pull this all the way through. So we have 1 loop, we're going to pull all the way through and kind of close that off. Now what you're going to want to do, and see, I'll make a nice decent corner, is I'm going to create a knot in the back of it here, trying to keep all my knots and stuff on the back. And then you can kind of test it. If it doesn't feel like it's tight enough, you're going to take your crochet hook, come through a loop here. I'm going to come through a loop here, grab my yarn, pull it partially way through, keeping a loop on this side, and then go ahead and tie these together. So like I said, I got my 2 loops here, and I'm just going to tie it. You can make it tight, and then you can trim and cut that, and then you can hide, like we normally say, you can hide the ends into the project. So you can go and kind of use your crochet hook and weave those ends into the crochet blanket to not make them as noticeable until you can kind of trim it down. But that kind of binds it off. You want to keep it as tight to the project as you can, and again, just go ahead and on the reverse side hide it in. If there's a lot of stragglers, I would make sure you're obviously watching a baby. If you use this with a baby, if you can't get the stragglers all hidden, then you want to not leave a baby unattended with this kind of blanket. It'd be great for like almost like a picnic type blanket where you know they're just going to be playing on it, or something that you can kind of keep a good eye. But we're going to just hide those in. Like I said, I have a problem because I had the knot, as you saw with the yarn. If the knot wasn't there, these would already be hidden in. But that binds off our blanket, and you can just test it to see if it's tied up enough. If not, you can make more knots. And then we have our diamond inset part. I'm going to have a picture at the end of this video showing what this looks like. And again, if you know better how to do the sewing together, that would be good. But I really hope you guys like this. And again, I hope I gave you some tips on how you can easily transform doing this onto a different loom. Like I said, using more pegs will make these squares bigger, which will make your diamond bigger. You can make, the best thing to do is make a bunch of these and kind of play around with how you want them to be, given how I talked in the beginning of how we had to do them in order to make the lines match up. So you can play around with that in your design if you want something even different. You can really just make a bunch of these and kind of lay them all out and create even different patterns than this diamond pattern. So again, I hope you like this, and I'll have a picture of this video at the end, or excuse me, a picture of this blanket in its entirety at the end of this video. And have a great day, everyone. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification button, little bell that you see too, so you can be notified of my next video.